Thank you so much. Let's get started right away with questions.
Okay.
Are we seated? Are we good?
Yeah.
Do we start asking the questions, or do they start asking the questions? I have a few questions.
Right here in the front with the mic.
Hi, I'm Nada. I'm 15.
You're 15?
Yeah.
And you're so poised.
Thank you.
Owen was not so poised at 15.
17's where I really hit my groove.
I watched Wonder with my mum, who's here with me today, and we both really loved the support that you gave Auggie as his mother. Themes of fitting in, especially bullying, are universal. How do you think the film will help all young people with the tools to deal with our own challenges?
Well, it's such a complicated topic, bullying, and certainly one, I have 3 children myself, and certainly one that we talk about. I think this novel was a great conversation piece for that as a family. And I mean, the one thing that I can truly, truly hope that I think is attainable is just for anyone who's feeling picked on or bullied to have a voice to some adult, not to keep it to themselves. I think that is the first step towards solving it and sorting it and understanding it and being able to heal and move on from it, is just, talking to your parents or talking to a teacher, but some adult to help mediate the situation for you.
We have a question right here.
Hi, my name is Tilda. I'm from Denmark. I wanted to hear if you ever yourself wanted to have a space helmet on and be invisible in any situations.
Yeah.
Right about now.
That's good. I think, I think everybody, but, that right, if you had a superhuman power, I bet that being invisible is right up there. But, kind of wanting to just sort of, I think that feeling that you have as a kid of wanting to sort of blend in and fit in is, it seems to be pretty universal with kids, unless you're, a very strong person. And and that kind of continues sometimes into being an adult.
We have a question right here.
I'm JD, and I just wanted to ask, what's your favorite funny moment behind the scenes?
It's actually, it didn't end up being behind the scenes, because then we used it in the movie when I give, Julia gives me her manuscript, and then I give her a present, and then when she opens it, that was something from behind the scenes, and but luckily you got to sort of see the reaction to it there in the movie. But
He wasn't supposed to give me a present in the scene. I was supposed to present him. But were you supposed to give me any present?
No.
You're just such a giver.
Well, it was, I just, remember how excited I was that day? I have an idea.
That was pretty funny. It was pretty funny.
We have a question right here.
Good morning, I'm Christy, and thank you for the amazing movie. The slogan and the hashtag of the movie is Choose Kind. So I would like to know, both of you, can you recall a moment in your life when somebody's kindness has saved your day, and in the opposite, when your kindness has saved somebody's day?
I think yesterday, that nice man whose birthday it was that came in and talked to us, he put a smile on our face for the rest of the day, and he told us such a sweet story.
Yeah, about being in school, and there was a classmate that had been in an accident and been
and he was
slightly
new
disfigured
as a senior.
And the guy reached out to him 20 years later.
40 years later. I'll just keep adding the true elements.
And saying that he, had always appreciated this guy's kindness to him, and it had always meant a lot to him.
Because he was the only person that had been kind to him in the senior year.
Yeah. Yeah.
So 40 years later, he reached out to this man to say, it still means something to me to this day that that year you were the one person who was truly kind to me. I think we were all kind of in tears at the end of it.
Yeah.
It was so sweet.
I think so.
Yeah.
Question back here.
Hi, I was wondering if you could elaborate a little bit about your relationship with the book, whether you'd read it before the movie was offered to you, to both of you.
I hadn't read it. I didn't know about it, and I had gotten an email from Stephen telling me about the story that he was working on. So that was my introduction to Wonder, was just reading the script. And but you had actually been, you'd read the book, gotten the book, you'd read about it in the New York Times, and then gotten the book to give it
He's
to one of
listening
your
to me when I'm
kids.
talking.
Yeah.
Keep going. And then what
Gotten it for one of
happened?
your kids, and then, you know, the way life gets hectic, somehow it got put on a shelf, and then a couple years later, you see the book, and you're like, gosh,
It
this
wasn't
is
a couple
that
years.
book, but I don't quite remember it. Let me read it to make sure it's appropriate for the age that my kids are now. And then you read it over a weekend and just loved it, and on Monday announced to the family that we're going to be, I think I've got a great new book for us to read as a family. And then
This is so
read
good.
it out loud. You guys read it out loud
Yes, we
together,
did.
right?
Mhm.
Not in one sitting.
Not
but,
in one, no.
Yeah. And everybody, it was one of those ones that, you know, just generated a lot of dinner conversation, because people would be like, "Oh, I felt this way," and
He's absolutely, I'm
Yeah.
thinking it and he's saying it. This is
Yeah.
incredible.
Yeah.
Let's do this all day. Okay, keep going. And then what happened?
And then you called your agent. You said, I don't know if, I'm sure something's already happening with this, or maybe it's already been made, but if it hasn't been, I would love to throw my hat in the ring, because I'd love to play the mother. And then the next thing started to, you know, get rolling, right?
That is 99.3% accurate. Well
hey,
done, Owen Wilson.
Question right here.
Hi, I'm Claudia, and I just wanted to ask, what would you say to someone who's like struggling at school and trying to fit in? Like, what advice would you give them?
That's such a tough one, because you don't want to, they're struggling, meaning they want to fit in, but they're having a hard time. I mean, it's such a great thing what Izabela says in the movie. So maybe you would say some version of that. It's hard to fit in when you're, how does it go exactly? When you're born to stand out.
Yeah, that Via says to Auggie, it's impossible to blend in when you
Yeah.
were born to stand out. But that's so hard to feel when you just feel
Right.
like, you know, you're
Yeah.
this big in a classroom of giants, or whatever the feeling is. It's
I
so
guess to
hard.
talk about your own, I would talk about, well, first of all, you know, that's a very, you know, I feel the same way sometimes, just so the person knows just how typical that is to feel that way.
Question right here.
Yeah. Hi, this is Christian from Germany. Good morning. I mean, usually this question would be one of the more corny ones, but since the movie is called Wonder and it's about wonder, when did you experience wonder in your life, or where did you find it? And also, I wanted to ask Julia, when did you invent the family book reading practice?
This is not an invention of mine. I cannot take credit for that. I mean, my dad read to us before bed every night, and you know, I think it's just one of the great universal
Would he make up stories too,
cuddle
or
times.
always read?
I think
stories?
mainly read books that we were ready for, but not
Yeah.
necessarily ready to, as readers, take on. And it was just a special, cozy time. So it's just a nice way to head into dreamland, I think, with the sound of your parents' voice. Though my kids do say, "Mom, just your normal voice, please. Don't do voices, okay? just read it." Which is really disappointing. Yeah. Every day, I think every day it's there for the recognizing for me, that's how I like to approach life. I know that my coworker here is far more
Cynical.
Question right here.
Absolutely adored this film, and so much of it stayed with me. But one particular line was from you, Julia. It was where you said that what's inside is where we're going, and what's on our face is where we've been. I was wondering, to each of you, what does that mean to you in your lives and in your career?
Well, Owen's face, I think that the clock is ticking on the... I shouldn't have said that.
Minutes.
Oh, we should speed things along. No, I think it's true, though, and it's sweet and it's wonderful, and I think all your life experience on your face ultimately, I think for both of us, shows a happy life. I think we're lucky people,
Yeah.
and yeah, it's true.
My mom worked with the photographer Richard Avedon for 10 years on this In the American West project, and he said to my mom about that people get the face they deserve, and that could sound kind of chilling or sound really good, but what I thought that he meant is that, you know, that sometimes your personality just comes through on with your expressions, the way that sometimes you're just drawn to a person just because you just sort of feel, God, that person just seems like really like just kind of there's just something, their energy seems really good, you know, and vice versa, you know, if you're kind of a crank, you know, the neighborhood crank, those faces tend to reflect that also, right?
We have a question right there.
Hi, I'm Monica from London Mums Magazine. I would like to ask you, Julia, what advice would you give to parents in a similar situation with a really special child in that way?
I would say there's 100 other people with better advice probably for you than an actor from America. But, you know, I think all families are special, and some that have these incredibly focused people in their family to take care of. I can't imagine what that's like. I mean, we've made our attempts and we have created this story about it, but I think all families really do make attempts to do the best they can with what they know and just love each other as deeply as you can every day. And I think the one thing about the kind of crippling of the world today that is the positive I see in it is that you do understand, sadly, on a near daily basis, how quick as a wink it can change. And just to hold a little tighter and love a little more loudly in your family, because the days are short.
The night is long.
Question back here.
Hi, you both play pretty cool parents in the film. I'm over here.
Wait, who's calling us cool? Oh, here we go.
Yeah.
We're cool.
You're playing pretty cool parents in the film. I want to know, do you actually think you're cool parents in real life? And more importantly, do your kids think that you're cool in real life?
Yes, see, they're two very different
Yeah.
questions, aren't they?
Right.
Because I was going to say, we're incredibly cool parents, but I don't know if the 5 children we have
Yeah.
between us would necessarily second that emotion. It would
Yeah.
depend on the day, maybe.
That does seem to be part of being a kid, is that, you know, growing up, you have to at some point start to kind of roll your eyes a little bit at your parents. And sadly, with me, it's already begun at, you know, at age 6, I'm getting that. But I think I'm a pretty cool parent.
Question right here.
Hi, I'm Arabella, and I have a question for both of you. So, what do you think about the key messages behind the movie?
The key message. God, there's a lot of good ones.
I would hope that it would be, well, that people would be entertained, and the way I was when I read the script, and that was just moved by the story. and then also about, just family as a source of strength for people in their lives, and obviously the kind of kind of relying on people's kindness and generosity of spirit, and yeah.
Well, he took all the answers, we're not going to do anything like this again together, okay? Because, and I'll just say, your hair is fabulous. Oh my word, gorgeous.
Well,
fabulous. Not talking to you,
used a good
Owen.
shampoo today. I did feel like I was having a good hair day, but you embarrassed me. Anyway, okay.
It's Thomas from German Radio. Film is much about giving same attention to both children. How do you give same attention to your children?
You have to be careful with that, obviously, because I'm the middle of three, and sometimes you do feel like your parents, had favorites or have favorites, and
because they do.
Because they do, yeah. I actually came across a note that my dad had written saying, Luke is my favorite. There, I've said what the other two believe, but he's my favorite not for the reason they think he is. He's the favorite because he's always available to go do stuff, and the other two are off, have already sort of begun with their kind of friends and, doing their own lives, and Luke was still around to sure, I'll go down to the office on Sunday.
Though.
Yeah, it was really nice. Yeah.
But I know it still hurts.
Yeah, it does.
Hi, this is Patrick from Germany. Julia, you seem to be sticking to a very strict one film a year rule. So how easy is it to find the one film that you want to do, and is it easy to say no to all the others?
It is easy to say no, and it just sort of falls into one a year, but it's not a mathematical equation that I'm trying to stick to. But fortunately, I have found things here and there that hold my heart enough to want to participate in them. So that's my good fortune. Yeah.
Last question, right over here.
Actually, this carries on probably quite well.
Last question, no pressure.
Oh my
It
God.
better be the best one.
That's a nightmare. I was just carrying on from that. How much of a fact now is the fact that you have children who are going to watch the projects that you do? How much does that factor into the choices and the decisions that both of you make? Are you thinking about the fact that you have a legacy of kids who are going to watch them?
I don't know that it factors into the decision, but when you work on a movie like this will be one that I'll be happy for my kids to see and go to, and so it's definitely this one I'll be proud to have them go to.
I think one finds that one's children aren't necessarily interested in one's filmography. Because perhaps one's children want to go see Cars 3.
Yeah.
But they do want to see this because they loved the book. And like any lover of a great book, of course, you want to go see the movie. So this is a sure thing.
Yeah.
Thank you all so much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Please have a seat. You want to take the second chair? Thanks so much. Let's get started right away. For a quick voice ID, would you please say your name and then your character's name?
I'm David Diggs. I play Mr. Brown.
Great. We have a question right here.
Hi,
Hey.
Lorenzo.
How you doing?
You told me that you've been a teacher before becoming an actor. So can you talk about what do you miss about being a teacher and how did that help you relating to this character?
Probably any teacher will tell you that you learn more from your students than you are capable of teaching them, and I think that's the thing I miss most is kids have a way of looking at the world that doesn't come with as much baggage because they haven't acquired as much baggage, and and so I miss that. I miss every day being able to tap into a way of looking at the world that is fresher than my own. And I think it helped with the character by just, being able to remember what it was like to be in a classroom, trying to remember a lot of the tricks I used to use to get their attention. And Stephen was really good about shooting around those ideas for me, letting me walk around the desks, do things like that maybe weren't necessarily in the script, but that really helped me be able to feel like I was back in my old classroom.
We have a question right here.
It's Christian from Germany. Good morning.
Hey.
How do you remember your own days in school? And I mean, it's part of being a good actor, also being a good teacher, also being a good actor, because you have to put on a show every day, right?
Yeah. So in school, I remember liking school mostly. I think middle school, that age that Auggie is entering is like probably tough for most people. And mine was pretty tough, but I earned it. I was like a weird kid. But I think, teaching is a lot like acting. I actually think it's more like doing rap shows for me. The thing about a rap show is when you're performing it's about managing energy, right? It's about understanding where your audience is and how we get them energetically to where they need to be in order to understand the music that is happening. And teaching is a lot like that. It's very sort of coming into the room and being like, okay, my students are all asleep right now. I need them to be this much awake in order to understand this lesson, but not this much awake because they'll run around and act crazy. So that's what it's closest to for me.
Hi, I'd like to ask about your name. It's a very unusual name, David. Can you tell us something about it?
Well, in my case, it's Hebrew. It's a Hebrew pronunciation of David.
I came from Israel.
Yeah. So
that's why I asked.
Right, beloved, is the translation as I understand it. And my mom's Jewish. When I was born, my parents had 7 dogs, all with Hebrew names: Mezuzah, Delilah, Hamantash, and Shlomo. So I was just the next in line. And so they named me David, but they spelled it with 2 E's in hopes that people wouldn't call me David, but it doesn't work.
We have a question right here. We just passed the mic over. Thank you.
Good morning. I'm Christy. You mentioned that teachers usually learn from children as well. So I would like to ask what you learned on the set from the children.
Oh man, I learned everything from the kids on set. This was my first movie, so those kids were way more professional than me. So they sort of had to teach me everything from, what you do during a break. I had to follow them to figure out where to go. I really didn't know anything. But I think as actors, watching them, one of the things that I try to take with me that I got from them, that I take with me to other sets, is how aware they all were of the energy in between takes. So all of them, you've seen the film, right? All of them are incredibly gifted actors and really great at performing. When you call cut on a set, it's sometimes really easy for the energy to disappear in the room. And what those kids were really great at is understanding, some people are feeling a little tired. Let's play a game, or let's tell jokes, or let's make sure we're going to be here all day. Like, let's make sure that we have the energy that we need to get through the thing. And that doesn't come naturally. That's a thing that actors and directors and everybody on set has to really cultivate. And those kids were so great at that. So when I work on other sets now, I try to remember that and be really conscious of how everybody is feeling in between takes, because otherwise those days can get really long.
We have a question right back here.
Hi. I was just wondering how you find the act of, when you're on stage, presumably you can tweak your performance for every performance. You get 8 chances a week to make any corrections or alterations you want, but in a movie it's set in stone and you've moved on. So how you feel about the fact that everything you've done is now immortalized and you don't get another chance? Is that a very different process as an actor?
Yeah, no, I'm terrified of it. I think I'm still riding a little bit on some blissful ignorance of the process. So, but it it's still kind of a foreign concept to me to do a thing and have that be it, and also to really have no control over how your story is told. Somebody else is going to put these performances together and really create the arc of this character. So the stressful part about that is that you want to make sure that you are happy as an actor with every take, because they could use any one of them. They don't have to ask me which take to use. But hopefully you are working, on this film, what I was so pleased by when I watched it was that, if you trust your collaborators, if you are working with a director that you trust, it's probably going to be all right. No one's trying to make you look bad. So, and this one, I was so pleased when I watch it. I have a hard time watching myself always, and I watched this one and didn't want to run out of the theater. So that, to me, that's a positive. That's a win.
Yeah, the teacher in the film is absolutely wonderful, has endless patience. The children react to him in the way that you would expect in a dream world. I was wondering how similar that is to your own experience, and whether, you can tell us perhaps a couple of anecdotes where now, perhaps looking back, you wish you'd done things differently, or where, you were perfect.
Yeah, I think Mr. Brown is definitely a better teacher than I was in a lot of ways. But I think, I think in the film we're seeing moments that are useful for the story and that are relatively good, but certainly there are bad days. I think you see a hint of it with that fight that happens in the hallway. Like, those are things that happen in classes. And I definitely, I remember having to, I hated to send kids out of class, but there were a couple times where it just got so out of control, and that was probably my fault. It was probably, me leading a lesson that was too wild or too just different, out of the norm for some kids to handle. I was also not a full-time, I was a workshop style teacher, so I was coming into other classrooms and teaching poetry units or teaching workshop-based stuff. So I had a little bit of an easier job, and that kids were always excited to see me because I wasn't their teacher. But even still, I think sometimes if you do something that requires a sort of different kind of structure, and maybe the class wasn't in that mode or the kids weren't ready for it, sometimes, I remember having to send a couple kids out of class, which I hated doing, because kind of one of the reasons I was there was to try to have something that was more useful for the kids who were problems, right? Because I was a lot of time working with rap music or doing stuff like that, so they could be the experts on it. And generally, those were the kids who I got to lead the class. Sometimes energy was just up too high and I couldn't control it. And I also didn't have the other thing about not being the full-time teachers, you don't have the same kind of authority. So, right? So they can always be like, I don't have to listen to you, you're not my teacher. Well, you're right.
What was the hardest or your favorite scene that you filmed during the film?
They're both the same, and it was that breaking up the fight scene, which was so emotional, and it was very difficult. It was hard for me to watch those kids fight each other every take. That's what was hard about it. But it was also my favorite because of how they all took care of each other after the cameras turned off. I told this story to some of you guys yesterday, I think, but when every time cut was called, all of the kids, because there's a bunch of kids in that hallway, and they would all come up and sort of hug the two actors who had been fighting and be like, hey, that was great, that was such a good take, oh my God, just really trying to take care of each other and make sure that everybody was okay, because it was so emotional, and they were crying, and it was just really wonderful to watch all of these young actors kind of take care of each other that way.
Hi, I'm Shadia. So you were a teacher, obviously, before, and obviously a teacher in the film, which you were great as. And what sort of advice would you give to teachers out there that are going through a very similar situation?
Ooh. I think, first of all, to all teachers, you are doing the greatest job in the world, so thank you. And if you are dedicated to it, thank you and keep doing it. Secondly, for me, I think you can always, in my experience, you can always try harder to meet your students where they are. a lesson that I had to learn over and over again. Especially, I think the older I get and the further I get away from where they are, the easier it is to sort of start imagining that I have the correct answer. But teaching for me was always about process. It was always about how do we get to an answer. And if you're open enough to that, maybe you can be open to the fact that maybe my process is wrong, particularly for this person. Everybody's brain works differently. So that's the thing I always tried to do, was understand that maybe this student doesn't think the same way I do. And so how can we figure out how to get to the same place if they need a different process than I would need?
We have a question right here.
Good. So you mentioned that it can be difficult to watch yourself on the screen, but what about listening? For example, if you listen Hamilton, how do you feel?
I don't listen to Hamilton because I did it too many times. But I have a hard time listening to myself too. I've always felt that way. It took me years and years to get over the sound of my voice, but it's one of those things that you do. You go in the studio all the time, and it's necessary as part of the job. I have to listen back to the takes that I do and choose the ones that are good. So, but I've always had kind of a fear of the sound of my voice. Like when I record an answering machine message or something, I hate it. It's the worst thing.
We have time for one last question right here.
Hi, it's me again. Speaking of Hamilton, how would you describe how this phenomenal success has changed your life and your career?
Well, you wouldn't be talking to me if I hadn't done that show. You know, I wouldn't have been in Wonder. I basically get to do all of the same things I did before Hamilton, but now people watch me do them, which is kind of cool. And I make a lot more money doing it, which is also kind of cool. So I don't know, but it's been an interesting ride, and I am skeptical about it. I don't know how long it will last, and so because of that, I think it also makes me treat kind of every opportunity as precious. So I am working a lot right now and trying to do all of the things while people still care what I have to say.
Great, thank you so much. Thank you, David. We'll start our next press conference in a couple of minutes.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you. Thanks so much. Thank you so much, everyone. So I'm going to ask each of you really quickly, starting with Izabela, to say your name and then your character's name.
Sure. Hi, good morning. My name is Izabela Vidovic, and I play Via.
There we go.
Much better. Hi, my name is Jacob Tremblay, and I play Auggie.
Let's open it up to questions. Let's start with a question right here.
Good morning, Jacob. It's Christian from Germany. My first question is, I mean, you spent a lot of time in makeup, and then you had to forget about the makeup and play. How difficult was that, or wasn't it difficult at all?
It was challenging, but I would do it again in a heartbeat.
We have a question right here.
Hey, Jacob. Hi. I know that you spent some time with kids who share the same condition as Auggie. Can you talk about that, meeting them and talking to them and getting to know them?
Yeah. Well, to prepare for the role, my parents and I, we were learning about facial differences online, and we found a group of kids in Sick Kids Hospital in Toronto. So I reached out to them and I asked if they could send me any letters of experiences or tips or anything they just wanted me to know. Later I got back all these letters, and I had this binder, and I put all of them in this binder, and I had it with me every day on set, and I would read it before I did some emotional scenes. And also before I filmed Wonder, I went to the CCA retreat. That's where families affected by facial differences get together and just have a good time. So they invited our family, and we got to go to Florida, and I made lots of friends, and it was very fun.
We have a question right here.
Hi, I'm Nada from Interfilm. So I'm 15, and I'm really interested in the fact that both of your characters go through really big milestones at school. What experience did you guys bring to the film of coping with big life transitions?
Well, I'm also in high school currently. I'm a junior. And my freshman year was my most difficult year in school. And Via also is entering high school in the movie. That's where we find her. And I actually had very, very similar experiences as she did. I think that a lot of high schoolers find that they lose friends in school when they enter, and they go through their own personal transformations. And so I found that was very relatable for me. I was able to channel into that.
And for me, well, when I was playing Auggie, I was actually still in elementary school. Wasn't in middle school like the character, but now I'm in grade 6. And I'm from Canada, so now I'm just in middle school. So I guess, yeah, I'm meeting new friends and stuff like that.
We have a question back here. Is that the mic back there?
I'm Thomas from German Radio ARD. Question to both of you. What are your favorite films, despite From Wonder?
The question's your favorite films besides Wonder.
That I've been in?
Please answer
Why that?
your favorite films you've been in and your favorite films, period.
Okay. Well, I have to think about this. One of the favorite well, first of all, Wonder is the favorite movie I've ever been in, because Auggie is like, what's a better character to play than Auggie? I mean, V is pretty good, but he's brave and he's confident and he's true to himself. So I think that playing Auggie is one of the best characters I've ever played. But other than that, I did a movie which isn't out yet. I'm in the new Predator movie, the alien one. That one was really fun because I got to do lots of stunts, and I like to do stunts.
What was your favorite film to watch? Just to watch, not to produce?
Watch. Everyone knows I like Star Wars, but other than that, I like the Karate Kid movies. Yeah.
That's a good choice.
Do you have a favorite film?
Yeah, I do. I love Guillermo del Toro. I'm a big fan, so I love Pan's Labyrinth.
We have a question right back here.
Yes, to both Izabela and Jacob. I was wondering whether you'd read the book before the script of Wonder was offered to you, and whether you remember the experience or how it, your reaction to the book. Possibly more to Izabela, I think, in terms of age.
Well, I was reading the book while I was auditioning for the film, so I wasn't familiar with it prior, but I found that it was interesting having that experience as I was sort of becoming Via, and I had, I think, 5 or 6 auditions, and at that time I was reading it, and it was really helpful for me to be reading her thought process at the same time that I was creating her.
We have a question right here.
So I'm JD, and I just wanted to ask, I love science, and tell us more about the Science Pod.
About the what, pardon me?
Tell us more about the Science Pod.
The science part of the movie?
Science Pod.
The
Science pod. Which is...
Oh, the actual pod that's made in the movie.
Oh, yeah, that one was really cool. I can't remember what they did because I'm pretty sure it was dry ice. But I like science too. Science is one of my favorite subjects.
We have a question right here.
Hi. You're both absolutely fantastic in the movie, and you've got some of the best on-screen parents that anyone could ever hope for.
Yep.
Could each of you tell us your favorite part about working with Julia Roberts and Owen Wilson?
My favorite part about working with Julia Roberts and Owen Wilson, well, first of all, Owen Wilson is the funniest guy in the world. Yeah, he can turn any scene funny if he wants it to. And he knows when it's time to, if it's not the time to make the scene funny. And he'll know when it's time to make the scene funny. So that's what's really fun about Owen, and he's also really nice and a really good actor. And Julia Roberts is amazing. I learned so much from her just by watching her act. I saw how focused she is and how intact she is with her character. This is the most important thing, I also saw how kind she is to cast and crew. And it teaches me that no matter how famous you are, you can always respect everyone with kindness.
Yeah, I mean, I second all of that. But in addition, I just think that Julia and Owen were really wonderful because they, from day one, made us feel very comfortable. It felt like we were playing a family. They made the environment really warm and pleasant for us. So coming to film was just really joyous, and they displayed kindness towards everybody, which is inspiring because we're working on a movie where that's the message.
And I have a question for both of you. What was your favorite moment of the film? Could be anything, and why?
Do you mean during filming?
The film, the best, your favorite part of the film. What you like the most about any part, special part of the film.
Well, you all have seen the movie, right? Okay. So now I know it's not a spoiler. But my favorite part is when Chewbacca is there. Yeah. And they actually had the real guy from Disney. So I was walking next to Chewbacca. I was like, I didn't even have words.
My favorite part was the last scene, the graduation scene, because I think it's the most emotional part of the film. And not only watching it, but filming it was really fun because I think it took us like 2 or 3 days, or two days to film it. And almost every cast member was on set, so the energy was really high. And we were all together in one place, and it was a really special experience.
And actually, RJ was there.
Yes,
she made
RJ
a
was
cameo
there.
in it.
She made a cameo, which the author, RJ Palacio, which was also incredibly special.
And during one of the scenes, we wanted to trick her, and instead of Mr. Tushman saying, Auggie, come get the award, he said, RJ, come get the award. So that was pretty cool.
Which we have on camera, and she didn't know that was going to happen. So
Yeah.
she got to come up and get an award from Mandy Patinkin, which is pretty cool.
We have a question right here.
Hi, I'm Arabella, and I have a question for both of you. What was the funniest behind-the-scenes moment?
That's really hard to keep track of. But one of the funniest parts that happened on set, well, most of them have to do with Owen, and some of them have to do with just us kids fooling around. But one time, Owen, during the scene, he stubbed his toe, and he fell to the ground, which was pretty funny. I don't know why I laughed at him getting hurt, but it was funny.
I mean, any scene with Owen, yeah, that was funny because he persevered. We finished the scene, but he was in pain. It's funny now. We can laugh. But any scene with Owen, honestly, he just improvises, so you don't know what you're going to get, which is always a blast.
We have time for one more question right here.
Hi, it's Valeria for Spain. Jacob, your face has been very recognizable after the success of Room. And of course, it's a very different reason of why Auggie is looked at. I wonder does it make you feel that people, even in school, people recognize you, look at your face, want to take pictures with you? How do you cope with that since that happened?
Pardon me? Sorry?
Like people recognizing you and seeing your face. Of course, it's different than what Auggie goes through, but at the same time, people ask you for pictures, people recognize you even in school. So I wonder, I guess from Room, there's been a huge change in your life.
Yeah, since Room, you're right, there definitely has been a big change in my life. I've been traveling a lot more. I've been getting more roles, which is good because I love to act and I think it's so fun. So lots of things have changed from Room that have just made me happy.
Great, thank you so much. Thank you. We'll start our last press conference in just a moment.
Thank you.
so much. To be your legacy.
Wow, it's only 10 in the morning too. You know, it's an honor and it's a privilege, really. You know, we only have one life on this earth, and the idea that, you know, if this is, aside from my children, who I think are the greatest products I've done, but you know, if this is my legacy, this is a pretty darn good one to you know, be proud of, and I will own it forever. I love the idea that it's inspired children, it's inspired people, and that it may live on in future generations long after I'm not on this earth. So that's kind of cool. Thank you.
We have a question right here.
Hello, good morning. Alessandro De Simone from Italy. And watching the movie, it's impossible not to think about Peter Bogdanovich mask. And I want to know if during the writing of the novel and and the film in the movie, if you have been any references about this movie or other movies of this kind. Thank you.
Well, I'd say for me, I love Peter Bogdanovich's film Mask. I also love David Lynch's film The Elephant Man. But I never, you know, it's funny, I never saw this particular, when I read her book, those weren't my references. What I loved about her book were all the multiple points of view, that it was about this family and it was about these friends, and it wasn't just about one condition or lack thereof. So for me, my references were more, I would say, we talked about E.T. and we talked about Stand By Me and a great film, Lasse Hallström's My Life as a Dog. Those were our touchstones.
Question right here.
Lorenzo Armando from Italy. After The Perks of Being a Wallflower, what is it like to adapt someone else's material? You know, can you talk about that and, you know, treating a story that's been written by someone else?
It was equal parts harder and easier. Harder in the sense that I felt a much deeper sense of pressure to do a good job, because I knew how, you know, I think her book is way better than mine. So there was that. But there was also the fact, but easier in the sense of I had great partners for this. RJ, first and foremost, but the gentlemen on my right and left were fantastic, and they did so much work on the project and the screenplay and some of the research and development with the prosthetics even before I showed up. I mean, I walked into a movie that was going, Julia Roberts was interested, Jacob Tremblay was going to be Auggie, and the script was pretty good and just needed a finishing touch, you know, ow, you know. So it was great.
We have a question right here.
A question for Stephen. I absolutely loved the film. I wanted to ask you about directing Julia Roberts and how does one go about that? She's so amazing, and the intense emotion that she makes everyone feel without going too far with crying. And obviously how delighted were you to get that amazing laugh from her that we all love?
Oh, thank you. Well, here, I'll say the laugh thing first. I got the laugh because this gentleman right here said she has the most famous laugh in movie history, and you have to get the laugh. So it was a challenge, and David was brilliant, and David knows how to direct me the way maybe I know how to direct actors. So does Todd, actually. Working with Julia, and David's worked with her before, you know, it's almost like being Michael Phelps' swim coach. She's so good at what she does, and what every director, what every filmmaker knows or producer is it's not even necessarily what's on the screen. It's the things in between takes. It's the stuff she does off camera to help her fellow actors. I found her to be incredibly generous, and she could do anything. You know, I remember the first day of school, we had the walk, much like you saw it in the film, and I had this crazy idea with take 7 or whatever it was. I said, listen, can we just try it for fun just one time? Can you just like cry every step, just cry, and maybe we'll try to make it a funny moment? And it was hilarious the way she did it. And then some guy took a picture of her from a long lens, and they turned it into a tabloid cover of like, you know, she had a breakdown on the street. I'm like, no, I just said action and cut, 'cause she's great, and she's Julia Roberts. So that's my answer.
We have a question right here.
It's Christian from Germany. Good morning. It's a question to RJ first. I once talked to an author whose book was adapted for screen as well, and he said, you know, it's like turning a cow into a can of soup, you know, in a way. And could you talk about the experience, you know, like following this? And also a question to the producers, how difficult was it to get this off the ground, or if you have Julia Roberts on board, is it easy? Or
I will start answering, and then they can take over because it is sort of a 1-2 answer. You know, it's really ultimately you just have to start. You have to trust the people that you're working with, and that's why you know the other people had approached me when the book first came out, but it was when I talked to Todd and David that I felt finally that I'd found two producers who wanted to make the kind of movie that I envisioned, which was a small and humble movie full of tenderness, you know, and that's kind of, I remember saying that to them early on, and they said, I mean, I remember Todd saying, you know, Raquel, I don't know how we're gonna do this movie exactly, but I promise you we will do it and that you will be happy with the end result. I promise you that. And I took him at his word, and every step along the way, it was a long sort of production process. You know, they optioned it almost 6 years ago. It was in 2012 that we first started talking, and one of the reasons was because they were getting all their ducks in a row, and I will let them talk about that because I think it was a complicated process.
Yeah, no movie is easy to make, that's for sure. And when David and I read this book, I looked back at my calendar, it was March 2012, so almost 6 years ago. You know, we both read the book and we just fell in love with it so much because it made us feel great. I mean, we were crying at the end, but we were crying tears of happiness. We were crying tears of like, wow, what amazing, this is how great people can be. And so just that feeling, that soul from the inside of how specifically this movie about a boy with a facial difference is going to get made, we have absolutely no idea. But to get that message out there in the same way that the book was hopefully going to was really a goal that we set out from the beginning. And certainly the book did. It became this giant bestseller. So that doesn't hurt to help get a movie made. And of course, when people like Julia Roberts read the book and then call us, David received a call from her agent several years ago, and she was interested, and it just kind of snowballed, and then the right pieces come into place. We went to Stephen probably 3 or 4 times to direct this movie before we actually got him. He was having his own child, and the timing wasn't exactly right. Jacob was too young at the time to actually make the movie the right way, so it all kind of worked out in the timing of it, and we're thankful to be here.
We have a question right here.
Yes, I have a question for RJ. How did you come up with the idea of writing this book?
You know, I was sitting in front of an ice cream store about 10 years ago now, and I was with my 2 sons. My younger son was very young. He was only about 3 years old, and some people sat down next to us, and it was a little girl who had she looked just like Auggie does in the book, and she had very, very severe facial difference. And my little boy, you know, he reacted, he started to cry a little bit, and in my haste to shield her from seeing his reaction, I kind of whisked him away, and afterwards I regretted it so much. I kept on thinking about all the better ways I could have handled that situation. You know, simply turned to the little girl, started up a conversation, you know, a million things that I could have done differently. But I was obsessed with that scene, and then that night, the Natalie Merchant's song Wonder came on the radio. And I don't know, it was just one of those moments that happen every once in a while where an idea comes to you, and it came to me then. I thought, okay, you know what, I'm going to write a book, and it's going to be called Wonder, and it's going to be about what it must be like to, you know, face a world every day that doesn't know how to face you back.
And you had never written a book before?
I'd never written a book before. I'd never written a published book before. I had always, you know, I'd always wanted to be a writer, and throughout my life, writing was sort of my little sacred secret that I didn't do for money because I had a different career, which is what I did as a stream of income. But I always wrote on my own. You know, so I have not a million, but I have a lot of sort of early drafts or half-finished novels locked away that should never see the light of day anyway. But I've always been a writer, just never published before. This was my first book that I completed.
Question back here.
This is also a question for RJ Palacio. I was wondering when you first noticed that the book was taking on a life of its own after it was published, and also whether the writing process was in any way cathartic. I know that also it must have been difficult because you had another career, you had children, you were waking up at 12 o'clock at night to write. So I was wondering whether you could talk a little bit about that.
Well, cathartic, yes, actually. It was. It sounds daunting, the idea of like writing at night, but actually, I looked forward to it every night after a while, because when you're writing, it's such it's such an intimate process with no one but you and the characters you create in the middle of the night, and then at a certain point, the characters seem so real to you that you feel like, well, I have to finish this book, because no one else will ever meet these people if I don't finish, and you really feel obligated at a certain point once you're really in it. And for me, it was cathartic. Just, there were nights that it'd be 2 a.m. and I'd be writing through tears. I made myself cry all the time. It was kind of great. I forgot the other.
You might have been sleep deprived.
I was also sleep deprived, definitely, but it was a really special time, and but I don't remember the first part of your question. Sorry. Right. Well, shortly after the book was published, in a modest way. Like when the first print run was, I think, 15,000 copies, which is considered a very modest print run. And we realized, I think, within about a month, when it hit the New York Times bestseller list, that there had been no major marketing money behind it. It was in the middle of the middle of the book publisher's catalog, so it wasn't one of the big books. And that kind of, it's not that it surprised everybody. It was just like, oh wow, this is the word of mouth, and that's how it built. Word of mouth through teachers and educators and just people who felt really passionate about it. And that's the moment when I thought, wow, wow, who knew that this could happen?
Question back here.
Sorry, another question to
Sorry.
RJ Palacio. Thomas from German Radio, ARD. How much or how concrete have you been involved in producing the film? Did you have any last word in the script and the casting, or did you even want to have a last word?
Yes, I had. These guys were amazing in bringing me into the process every step of the way. And not that they were contractually obligated, because I signed away, I optioned the book very early in the process, and you want to make a movie, cool, and I kind of signed it away, but they were so wonderful in keeping me abreast of all the happenings and trying to explain why things weren't getting made, and then. Checking in every step of the way. And then when Stephen came on board, he brought me in even more. I mean, Stephen and I just formed a really nice relationship from the beginning, where he would call me up and ask my opinion about this or that, in terms of some casting choices and everything from would the Pullmans have a yellow sofa, to what kind of laptop sleeve would Izabela have? It was really kind of fun delving into little details that no one else but Stephen and I would really care about. And we've kind of I'm the mama bear of Wonder, and he's the papa bear, and Augie's the little baby bear.
And they're the producer bears.
Yeah.
Yeah, but like Mandy Patinkin was someone that you had wanted from the
yeah.
very beginning. Like that was your casting idea.
Yeah. I remember watching Homeland and thinking Sol Berenson would be the perfect Mr. Tushman.
This was really a lot about trust, because this movie took several incarnations before it was made in the way that it was made. We had different writers, different directors, because Stephen was unavailable. And I have to say, you had a lot of trust in us, because these things, like movies do, they come together, they fall apart, they come together, they fall apart. And you were trusting of that the whole time through every incarnation of it. And we tried to help you understand it will come together, it will happen in the right way, and it did.
Well, and I also have to say about these two gentlemen on the end, there's so much written about Hollywood these days, and I just sensed from the very beginning that I was dealing with very, very good men and very good people and very good, good-hearted, well-meaning, and just really awesome people. So putting trust in that is sort of a valuable thing, and it's something that we all. I feel like I've always done. When I find someone that I think is really a great person, you know, you just kind of put your faith in them and hope for the best.
You got to live by this bracelet that I wear called Choose Kind, which actually, yeah.
Question back here.
Hi, I'm Becky from a charity called Changing Faces, and this is a question for all of you. Obviously, this film has huge potential to make a positive impact on the way people value difference, and there's a lovely line about changing the way people see. So could you talk to us about the positive difference in society you hope the film is going to make?
I'll start, okay. You know, it's kind of a high bar to think about what kind of difference a movie might make in society, but all I can hope personally for all of us is that the movie does something like what the book has done. And I think the book, I remember that first time I finished reading it, and when David and I were talking to each other, and I just felt better. And I always think that, you know, we have the ability as filmmakers, and therefore a little bit of the responsibility as filmmakers, to make movies that when you leave the theater, you feel a little bit better than you did when you went into the theater. And this really embodies that. I think when you leave this movie, you just feel uplifted. You feel like you want to do good things. So, you know, I'm thankful that we got to participate and really meet all these wonderful and amazing and beautiful people in the craniofacial difference community. And we have. I mean, we've spent a lot of time with doctors and patients and families and just all kinds of people that we've become really close with and friends with. But and I'm glad that will shine a light on the beauty of that community. But really for everybody, and as RJ was saying, you know, we're deluged daily with just the negativity in humanity right now. And so why not spend some time with the positivity?
Actually, one of the unforeseen wonders of everything that's happened, at least for me, is the endorsement and the sort of the embracing I've received and wonder has received from the craniofacial community, both in the United States, here. You know, when I was in Italy last year, I met with the My Face in Italy, and the idea that my book and now this movie has in any way made their lives somewhat easier in terms of how they're received and perceived. And I had a dad tell me that he had a son who had Treacher-Collins syndrome, and he told me that you know, going to the playground used to be kind of, you know, an ordeal. You know, his son never wanted to go out. He just didn't want to deal with the stares and the questions and sort of the rude comments. And he said, but now with Wonder, it's totally changed everything, that he likes to go out, he likes to go to the park, and people will come up to him and say, hey, oh, do you have what Auggie Pullman has? And he said it's just changed him completely, and that, more than anything, we were talking about legacy before, that is a legacy that I will own and I'm very proud of and touched by.
Yeah, I'll say for me, if you wanted everyone, that line, that's one of the lines, basically most of the screenplay and the great lines in the screenplay are from RJ's book. I was able to write that line, and it came from personal experience, the idea of if Auggie can't change the way he looks, maybe we can change the way we see. And I think that first and foremost, I think that this could do a lot for people's awareness of the condition and awareness of families and struggles, but also far beyond struggle, triumph and beauty. And I know for a fact because the first person that I changed was me. You know, the process of making this, and like what Todd and Davis talked about and RJ in working on it, you know, when you live in this world for, in my case, I'd say a year and a half, and fairly nonstop for about a year and a half now, I'm a far better person today than I was when I started. I didn't expect to feel that way. I'm a better father, a better husband, a better person, and I think a better artist. And it's a great thing when you are aware of something. And I know for the power of movies can change a lot, and I think this movie could do a lot to change hearts and minds. I really do.
I think for me, I was involved in a television show many years ago called Monk, dealing with the OCD, and that show did a lot to bring light to the condition of OCD. And I think any time that we can break the stigma of what these things are, we've done a great service. And I think this film, hopefully, it will do that and bring to light, you know, differences, not just facial differences, but all kinds of differences, racial, religious, everything. I mean, that's really what the book is about in a much larger vein, which is just let's accept people for who they are. So.
We have time for 2 more quick questions. The first one back here.
Okay, this is a question for Stephen. The movie's got some very emotional moments. Were there any in particular that were very difficult for you to direct, to be filmed?
None in particular that were difficult, you know. I had a great cast. I was really lucky, and they had chemistry, and they trusted each other, and they supported each other, and I made sure. My philosophy is, I know a lot of directors talk about getting a performance out of an actor. I like to create an atmosphere where people feel free to give one. And it's much easier, it's much better manners, and I think ultimately leads to a better performance. So no, nothing in particular.
Can I point out one moment that maybe you'll recall? There was a scene that we shot, which was Auggie and the parents in bed, and it was a scene that we actually filmed. And when the scene was done, and Stephen's like, I'm not feeling this. There's like something off here. And he spent a lot of time thinking about it. And the scene that ended up in the movie was Auggie going downstairs after Daisy had died, and Nate's sitting at that table alone, and they share an intimate moment. And that was Stephen's creation after seeing a scene that he didn't think quite worked. So kind of just seeing him kind of agile on his feet. And I'm not saying it was a difficult thing to shoot, but there was certainly that moment when you're like, I'm just not feeling what I need to feel, and you came up with an alternate idea.
Last question right here.
Hello, this is Patrick from Germany. A question for David and Todd. How difficult and expensive is it to cast Chewbacca in your film?
Free. It was pretty easy. We have a long-standing relationship with Kathy Kennedy, who now runs the Star Wars Empire. And it was an easy phone call to Kathy to say, could we use this? It's actually a big part of the book and a big part of the character's identification. And she said, yes, send me the script and let us look at it, and called back and said, absolutely.
It's really a testament
really
to the beauty of the book, really. Who wouldn't want to be a part of it?
Yes.
Well, and I just want to say that those were I mean, when people ask me if I'm happy with the adaptation, it's like, not only am I happy, I'm thrilled, because they've taken one medium, they've taken this, narration, and it was elements like that, these sort of magic, realist elements, these moments of whimsy that aren't from the book, are inspired or sparked by it, but are the sort of cinematic magic that came together through Stephen and also the other scriptwriters, and that really kind of made this movie, I think, something its own work of art. It's not just a translation or an adaptation, a straight adaptation of my book. It's unique unto itself because they added, it's like alchemy, they added other stuff to it, and those little moments are I think what make the movie so magical.
Great, thank you so much. I'm going to ask everyone to stay seated. We'll get our next press conference started in just a moment. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.